What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are back with some Detroit Lions news, man. We're back with an episode of Lions the Latest. Now, this one is not some news that just dropped today. Actually, this news was announced yesterday, but today we're going to dive a little bit more into this move. The Detroit Lions reportedly have signed defensive lineman Christian Covington from the LA Chargers. So let's get it started. Welcome everybody to our video. Glad you guys are here, and I'm going to do my best to fly through this. I know we've done some draft breakdowns, and those things have been very long, and they're probably going to continue to be pretty long, so I'm going to try to fly through this as fast as possible, not make this video take as long. That's kind of the plan. You may have already seen this news. You probably have already seen this news that the Lions have signed this player. I was a little bit late to actually getting this news. Then we went live last night, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to focus on watching the player, get some takes, get some thoughts on what this guy I think could bring to the table for the Lions, where he could potentially compete for the Lions, and what this means for the Lions. So who is Christian Covington? We'll start right there. So yes, it's a defensive lineman out of Rice. He was a 6th round pick back in 2015. Now, when he came out of the draft, he measured in at 6'2", 289. Now, I've seen the LA Chargers on their website. I believe they have him listed at like 305. So he could be closer to that mark. It wouldn't surprise me if he had a little bit weight added. You know, he's not getting ready for the combine. So it wouldn't surprise me if he's actually a little bit heavier now. But from going through and watching multiple years, you know, going back to when he played with the Dallas Cowboys, looking at 2021, looking at 2022, looking at multiple years of him, you can see that, man, he's played pretty much everywhere along the defensive line. He's played in tons of different alignments with the LA Chargers playing some 3-4 defensively. We've seen him play 2-gap. We've seen him play 1-gap with Dallas. We saw him transition to a 4-3 attacking, kind of like a 3-tech with Dallas. Then you go to LA and you get a little bit more attack and react. So he's played a ton of different spots. He's played a lot of different ways defensively. And he also brings us some veteranship. Is that even a word, veteranship? That sounds kind of cool. I like that. I've never said that before, veteranship. I can guarantee I've never said that before. It brings some veteranship to the Detroit Lions defensive line after, of course, letting go of Michael Brockers this offseason. We got still a very young defensive line. Like, most of our guys are on their rookie deals. Now, Aleem McNeil, it's like, hey, we know what that dude's about. We know what Hutch is about, James. But we still do have a pretty young defensive line, specifically along the interior. Isaiah Buggs is young. Benito Jones is young. So this gives us a little bit more age to that positional group. But at the same time, it also gives a lot of flexibility. He's 29 years old right now, and he's bounced around the league. So he was drafted by the Houston Texans. He was not re-signed by the Houston Texans. And that was after coming off, I believe, a career season, like 3.5 sacks in his final year with Houston. Bounced around. It started off with the Dallas Cowboys, of course, in 2019. Then he landed with the Denver Broncos. He was ultimately traded from the Broncos to the Cincinnati Bengals in 2020 for a linebacker in return. And while this is all happening, these are all one-year deals that he's landing. So it's just like 1 year, 1 year, 1 year. After being with the Cincinnati Bengals, then it was the Chargers for a year. They liked him. They brought him back for another season in 2022 this past year. Another 1 year deal. And now he hit free agency once again. So it's been just a lot of 1 year deals for Christian. And, you know, I'm sure he's hoping to get an extension. You know, it's probably pushing that time where if you're going to get one, it's going to happen soon. A long-term deal or it's just not going to happen. And I don't know if that's in the cards for the Lions in that case. I mean, we've had guys like Charles and things like that, but they're usually not 29. It would usually be in the situation of kind of like when Dallas signed him, that would be the kind of move that the Lions would make. So I'm not sure that this is necessarily as much of a guy that could be like a long-term piece here if he plays well. I mean, you never know. If he balls out, maybe he is, but it definitely, I could see it being more of just a guy that can be a rotational piece, play to the scheme that clearly, you know, we're kind of built for at this point in time, just based on the personnel we brought in. We brought in Broderick Martin, a nose tackle out of Western Kentucky that can play 1-gap and 2-gap. We've seen him do both, and even Brad Holmes brought that up. So, you know, this guy kind of just fits into the personnel that we currently have. And also, when you talk about only adding the one, you know, defensive tackle, nose tackle in the draft, it's also a position where, again, we're young and the depth needs competition. We added Corey Durden. Hope I'm saying his name right, out of NC State. We touched on both those guys in the last video. Chris Smith out of Notre Dame. Both guys that I like, you know, both bring a couple different things to the table, but this guy just brings a little bit more provenness. And I guess if one of those young guys steps up and they earn a roster spot, Christian probably doesn't make the team. But if they do not, and maybe they're practice squad players, I think Christian's got a real shot because he's not a guy that's just going to play maybe one position. He can play multiple positions. And it really comes back to him coming out of the draft. So everybody loves the relative athletic scores. He posted an 899 relative athletic score, and everybody loves this, but it also speaks to his flexibility. It really does when you watch him because of his size. Obviously, like we said, 6'2", 290 coming out. But then you also look at the arm length, which is really nice, 33, 1.25-inch arms. Seen him play in the 4 tech. We've seen him do some 5 technique, 4 eye. So you've seen him work on tackles a little bit there. It's not like, I don't think it's like Josh Paschal's arm length, maybe not even John Kaminsky's, but it's allowed him to kind of be flexible in that sense that he's been able to kick out a little bit more. But he's also been able to play in the interior with Dallas, with LA. He's been able to stick in the interior as well, because you start to look at some of the testing scores, and he tested out really well in a lot of important positions. 24 bench press reps, right? 30.5-inch vertical, which was really nice. The bench press reps didn't necessarily stand out, but the vertical was really nice for a guy his size. The 3 cone drill, the 7.43, was in a really good tier. Also, posting the 40 time of a 4.9 flat, and then combining that with the 1.68 10-yard split. Both of those were pretty much elite scores at the combine when he came out. I think it was actually a pro day for him. So he tested really well. Some people thought, man, maybe he should have went back to college for another year when he came out. Maybe came out a little raw. He had an injury that he had to deal with as well. And that's something that he also had to deal with this past year with the Chargers, was an injury. Cut his season short. We only saw him play in 4 games this last year with the Chargers. So there's also some of that. It's probably some of the reason that he wasn't re-signed by LA. But that's an opportunity for us to get a guy that could be productive. And we've seen like signings like this. Don't overlook them, right? We had John Kaminsky, and it's just like, whoa, this guy's a dog. So don't overlook these guys. Not saying this will be John Kaminsky, but there are a lot of things to like, and he clearly fits in schematically. I wouldn't be surprised if the Lions bring him in and play him a little bit more as an interior player. See how it goes. We played some 3-4 looks last year. So, again, the flexibility is there to kind of line up everywhere. But I wouldn't be surprised the Lions mainly use him more inside of the tackle box. That being said, diving in and watching this player, we'll start with the competitiveness and just the way the guy plays. And this is something that stands out very quickly. It stands out with Broderick Martin. You saw that in the Shrine Bowl. And it stands out with this player as well. The way that he just fights, the way that he battles. Now, he's kind of just been a rotational defensive lineman to this point. And statistically speaking, he doesn't blow anybody away with his sack numbers, and we'll talk about that. But you do love the way that the guy plays the game. He seems to get in on every single play, the way he battles through double teams. He's in a bad position, the way he fights into it. He's just a high energy player, high motor type of player, just a guy that gives it everything when you watch him. You love the way that he just plays the game, high energy pursuit. You get second, third effort wins when he does win as a pass rusher. So all of those things are things that, kind of tie into a lot of guys we brought in. Just high energy, high football character from just the film alone that it looks like here with Christian Covington. Then you dive into, I think, some of the feel for the game, some of the instincts as a player. I get some hit and miss here, okay? I think first off, when you start with some of the good, for example, when he's taking on double teams, some of the combo blocks, you had a team like New England who he played in 2021 who likes to run a lot of the duo run scheme, so you get a game like that, and you get some hit and miss there taking on some of those double team blocks, but at the same time, you see the capability, and a lot of guys bigger than him can't do it, but he can do it at his size. And again, a lot of it's the technical side. We talked about that when we went through some of the UDFAs, and technically speaking, I think he has a really good feel for when it's approaching, and he understands how he wants to take on those blocks. Like, there's clearly a plan to hold his ground, hold his gap that he's playing, and there's a plan to be able to hold his ground in those situations. There's legitimate knee bend, which shows up in a lot of different parts of his game to sink, hold his ground. I think he's got a really nice jolt, a lot of power into his punches, and there's an ability to create leverage consistently on the point of attack, and you see that there's a plan. Now, where I think he gets a little bit wobbly here is when the initial point of attack isn't great, and I think some of that is when he's forced to kind of move out of the spot. I thought as a whole, his point of attack entry angles improved in 2022 this past year. They just look better with LA than from 2021 specifically. Just more consistency in terms of how he took on blocks and the angles that he approached them with. But this is where things get a little bit wobbly with him as a run defender, is when you get those hit and miss entry angles and he's kind of like taking on 2 guys at one, clean contact on the one player to kind of lean through and then play off of. So at that point, you get him kind of washed out occasionally, but then you also see the good reps and you're like, well, hold up, look at this. He's clearly capable of being able to do it. I thought he was better at handling himself, honestly, against these double team blocks on the interior, playing a 3 technique, playing a 2-eye. I thought he was better there, and even though they both had hit and miss, than he was playing as a 4, meaning head up on an offensive tackle. Even some tight ends and big tackles gave him problems. Obviously, they can outreach him at times as well there. So I thought he was even better, more consistent towards the interior in these spots, but it spoke to, there was definitely some awareness there. Now, where I didn't love the awareness is teams attacked him with screens. I thought this showed up a little bit more in the past, Cowboys 2021, but teams went at him with screens. I saw Minnesota do it, and I think part of it is that he's really good athlete, very explosive off the line. That's still in his game. But at the same time, the lack of awareness to understand how the blocker was playing him and that they were setting up a screen and kind of letting him fly by. There was only, I think, one example where I thought he played it pretty well and he actually covered it up, but I don't think it was a feel of the offensive line. It was kind of just he got knocked into the running back. That's something they clearly kind of went at him. He was out at the 3-tech position. They attacked him on screens. They tried to get him upfield, and I thought they had more success than not when you're talking about that. Now, the quickness off the line, the first step capabilities here. Again, he's played in 2 different types of defenses where he's been asked to kind of get upfield, go. And you saw the capabilities with Dallas. Like, you saw the explosiveness. I thought his snap awareness got better. You can see him watching the ball, the jump off the line. You see it is that he's consistently good in both areas here, depending on how you're asking him to play. If you're asking the 2-gap a little bit more, you see the ability to quickly get his hands on an offensive lineman, the quickness that he has there. I think he does a good job. I would say good. He's good at getting into blocks, getting into offensive linemen in terms of consistent wide base into contact. You get plus leverage into contact, and there's some pop there as well, man. He really jolts players. So, you know, I think you saw it from both fronts. There was a good first step when he was asked to kind of be more of a penetrator, and then there was also the flip side when he was asked to hold his ground a little bit more, play through an offensive lineman. You also saw the quickness that he showed into contact. I think it's one of the better parts of his game. Fast initial hands, and then also some of the ability to sink. And this shows up on double teams, but it also just shows up into contact in general. He was really good against single block. He was playing a head-up alignment, 2 technique, meaning head up with an offensive guard. He was really good at being consistent in those areas, winning single blocks, and that's why he has 2-gap capabilities, because he's able to hold his ground, specifically when he's single blocked, and he does a nice job with good arm length, getting extension, locking out, and then also reading the backfield as the play goes on, finding a way to find the football. Just that alone, just finding a way to see the football, and I think he's capable of playing in both schemes, which is definitely huge for just versatility for the Lions. Now, when it comes to more of the pass rush side, and we'll kind of revisit the run defense, when it comes to more of the pass rush side, this is where I think you get definitely less consistent results than you would like to see. His skill set, I think, would make you think that maybe he'd be better here. This was also a knock, I guess, coming out of college, even though I'm going to be honest, I didn't watch him coming out of Rice. Like, I didn't know a thing about him, but the skill set is definitely it's not great as a pass rusher is what I will say. Now, where I think he could have some effectiveness for sure, and he's had, is stunt work. Whether that's being the guy that creates it or the guy that loops around. Like, he's pretty light on his toes, got quick feet. He's really nice on his feet. It shows up in some recovery as a run defender, but also as a pass rusher. So when you try to kind of loop him around, he's got those capabilities from the interior to loop around, stick towards the offensive line and get some pressure. But also, he could be the guy that could create the pass rush as well through stunts, even on the interior with some of the get off and also some of the sink, and then all of a sudden they open up the rush lane for a stunt. So that's where I think you could probably get the most consistent results from him as a pass rusher. Outside of that, though, it's very hit and miss. I think he clearly shows the ability to reset his bases where he has success right now, collapse the pocket. You see the ability to get leverage, get some sink at the knees, and have pop on his punches. Like that's real, and you'll get a lot of wins where it's kind of like multiple punches, bop, bop, bop. When he squares up an offensive lineman, he's at his best, effectiveness collapsing the pocket. But right now, outside of that, I think it's a lot of kind of hit and miss. It's a lot of second, third, I think more effort wins than it is technically like, oh, that's so fluid, he's winning. It's pass rush counter. Even the initial pass rush plan seems to be kind of a little bit of a mess at this point in time. Like, I don't see a ton of the lean to win an edge consistently, even though, you know, he tried that. Sometimes they had him working on tackles. Sometimes you get some flashes in there. I don't think you get a ton of lean. You do get some shake, which could be nice as a 3 technique at, you know, the first pass rush move that he deploys. Consistency in terms of being very accurate with his hands at that point as well. Like, when he's able to square you up, get in your chest, he can jolt you back. But in terms of the hand usage, you'll see a lot of hand swipes that are kind of just seemingly thrown out there, and they're not very accurate. And slaps that he tries to, you know, throw out there on offensive linemen, they seem kind of just all over the place. And obviously offensive linemen next level are much more technically sound, so they'll kind of throw something at him and then pull back, and then he's in bad spots. But you get a lot of that. You don't get a lot of accuracy there. And I didn't think there was a lot of just fluidity in terms of, okay, I'm going to do this into that. And I think that's because the original pass rush plan doesn't always look great. Sometimes it's almost like you feel like he kind of slowed himself down because there's not a lot of efficient speed to power, bull rush, I'm pushing you back to the pocket. There wasn't a ton of pure wins like that. And I think part of that is because with LA, there's a lot more attack and react. So for him, it was more so he would have to transition from playing the run to rushing the passer. And when he had to do that, you didn't get a lot of fluidity there. With Dallas, I think you had more wins because he would be able to just say, I'm pinning my ears back and going. Or with LA, when he was in clear pass rush situations, they put him over a center, you could have some more wins like that. Clear speed to power wins were not consistently there for bull rush. Yes, he had the ability to reset, create power. He gives you tons of effort to just keep battling. I didn't see a lot of fluidity in terms of like there wasn't any kind of spin counters I saw. There wasn't any kind of like from one angle to flipping it to the other angle. Sometimes it felt like you wanted to. I just didn't think it was the most instinctive as a pass rusher right now. So I don't know if you're going to get like tons of pressure numbers from him. It may be more of an effort thing, more of a stunt thing, and more of like, okay, it lined itself up. He's got an opportunity and he has the strength and the movement skills to do it. But I don't think you're going to get a consistent like, oh man, just line him up with a guard and let him go to work. He's got a huge, array of moves to beat that guy. I didn't see that necessarily when watching him. I just didn't think it was super fluid, transitioning everything and kind of tying everything together. Now, back to tie it together as a run defender, I thought you saw a lot of versatility, just in the sense of, first off, you go to a game like Atlanta, right? We talk about New England throwing, a lot of the duo scheme. You look at a team like Atlanta, a lot of stretch plays, right? Wide zone plays. And you see the ability to just stand in there and play it. And it's like, man, he's playing this really well. Whether that was better proactive angles. Occasionally you'll get flashes of like bad run angles and it feels like, he's attacking one way, but the run scheme is like asking for something else. And he'll kind of pull himself out of the play. But I thought that improved. I thought more discipline improved as understanding the defense. But even on top of that, like, he was able to play those stretch runs. Like, he was really sticking with it. And I think a lot of that was, you see how quick his feet are, the movement skills, the ability to jolt offensive linemen when he's able to square them up and kind of control the block. Lateral movement skills while being able to keep a low pad level through contact, extend, and just move and flow with the play. The ability to recover when he gets himself a step behind and work himself back in front of the block. That was something that I noted about one of the UDFA signings as well. Like, he was able to hang against that. He hangs against double teams. And then you also see the awareness when you're playing a team that likes to pull offensive linemen. If his lineman gets pulled out of the play, then the awareness to say, okay, I see that. Let me adjust and let me find the next assignment, right? Because he's not attacking upfield. He was asked to more attack and react play through the lineman. So he was able to find the next assignment very well. And you saw flashes of that. So there was some really good stack and shed. There was some really good two-gap moments, kind of violent, jerky, like shed ability, where he's able to gain connection and kind of just throw you off. Now, where I think he got into some trouble was some balance. I did think there was some hit and miss balance, and I think that was more just resetting himself. Sometimes he kind of felt the play of, it felt like he was feeling the flow of the play, and he was kind of just attacking, and then he wouldn't always get himself under control, and he'd start to kind of wobble and fall over. I think he's going to have better contact balance just because of the way that he's built. He plays pretty low to the ground. He's got a nice build. The contact balance is going to be really solid. I think it's just, naturally, it's going to be a plus. But I think at the same time, his balance got a little bit hit and miss because he seemed to get a little bit out of control at times when playing the run. There's clear upside to play one gap, play two gap here. I think he could fit into what our scheme is asking for really well. And then he's also has a lot of talent. Like, the length is there, all the measurables are there. There's a lot of talent to stack and shed. As a pass rusher, I think you're getting more of an effort winner than a pure, like, oh, everything's very fluid here. But you're also getting a high effort, high energy type of player, that's bounced around a lot of one-year deals. Wouldn't be surprised if this guy made the roster. It would not shock me. He's got young guys to battle with. It's going to be a great competition, but the dude can legitimately play. Like he can legit play. Forget any of the stats that you see. Forget I don't know what his PFF grades are actually that well, but forget all those things. Actually, I have them right here. Okay, here we go. So yeah, 2022, he had the torn pectoral muscle, so he only played in 4 games. But you can see his PFF grades, in 2021, they gave him a 55.9 overall. 2020, they gave him a 51.7 overall. So, kind of middling. But the guy can definitely play. The length and quickness tie together for pass rush upside, as Brad Holmes always puts it. But you also still have the first step explosion, like you saw with Dallas even more. But then also on top of that, he has the background of playing through offensive linemen. So he gives you some scheme flexibility depending on what you want to ask of him. But definitely could play across the entire defensive line from a nose tackle role all the way out to playing as a defensive end as a 3-4. May get some hit and miss consistency there. But in terms of that versus young guys, that could stand out as more consistent than what they bring right now. So we'll see where that all plays out. I think this is a really nice signing for the Lions. I don't know if he becomes a starter for us. Is there talent to start? I think, yeah, there's games where he could start. You saw that there was games that he's played where he's been the starter. Lit up teams. He's played really well. Some games look much better than others. But at the same time, I think the talent's there. He's probably more of a backup, but he could definitely make this roster. With that being said, I'm going to try to leave it there, not go too far into this. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, man. Welcome to the team, Christian Covington, and we'll see how this thing goes. Thank you for watching, and I'm out.